Hello food friends, my name is Veronica and I'm from BM Cooking, and today we're actually going to be introducing a traditional German dish. My mom has cooked it off quite a few times, my grandma cooks it all the time, and we call that dish Kraut&Brei, which really means cabbage and mash. I don't know if there's an actual name for it because that's the most traditional way you can go, right? If there's no name, then you know it's very traditional and actually authentic. So it's a German dish, as I said before, so it will have very hearty ingredients. We're gonna go over those here now. All right, so for the ingredients, you see it's all pretty simple. We have, of course, the normal salt, as we always use it. We are gonna use peppercorns today. Now, peppercorns, not actually putting them through the grinder because we don't need that. We need just the bare flavor of the corns. I'm gonna explain to you later how that is gonna work. Very important also is bay leaves. For those who don't know, this is what a bay leaf looks like. My package is already open, so I can't show you the whole thing. But very important, and I'm gonna use that in a lot of stews and soups and everything because it gives it a really nice flavor. So definitely get that. Then we will need an onion. Onion this size is perfect. We need a full onion that way, so whatever fits in your hand, that's perfect. Then we're gonna need, and this is really for the mashed potatoes later, I'm gonna use 6 potatoes here just to kind of round up the portion sizes. We will also need sauerkraut. Now, as you can see, this is not a sauerkraut that you usually find in a supermarket. This one is actually bought at Sasha's market. I will include the information here for you. So if you're in San Antonio, you can get this original made sauerkraut because it is really not easy to make sauerkraut. I attempted it myself, but you need a specific salt, you need a specific, specific ingredients, and it takes a long time to do. But this one is already done. She makes it fresh, I think every Wednesday, so you can get that there. That's what I also use for a lot of other dishes, especially for a Russian dish called borscht. I will show you that at a different video as well. Most important ingredient is this. Now, this is a bone-in pork shoulder picnic roast. What you usually need is, in German, it's called Haxe. It's really a pork leg or pork shank, if you will. We could not find that here. At least I couldn't find it here in San Antonio. So I had to use this. What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna use the whole thing. This is a good 8.69 pounds of pork right here. We're only gonna be using maybe a third of this, if not, maybe like half. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it up. So what I'm gonna do, and this is what I'm doing with a lot of meats, this is a good tip. I'm actually buying meat in quite the big sizes so I can just portion them and then freeze them. We usually get our meat like chicken and ground meat and all that. We get our chicken and all that in Costco. Costco gives them to you, of course, in giant sizes. So what we're doing is we're coming home, we portion them and we freeze them. Way easier, way cheaper than just buying chicken every time fresh or ground meat every time fresh. And this here I got from HEB, so I'm just gonna be using this and I'm doing the same thing. I'm probably gonna be doing thirds and then just pretty much freezing the rest. And also what is very important for you to have is a pot in this size. Pot in this size because of course a third of this is pretty large. We're gonna have to put this all, we're gonna have to fit it all in here. And you will also need, you know, other items to actually get that all cut, like a giant knife like this one. That's what I like to use. I will also sharpen it. I'm gonna show you the gadget for it. But this is really the ingredients list. So now we're gonna go ahead and prepare the meat. All right. What I'm gonna actually start with is introducing this little gadget here. Love it, love it, love it because it really gets the job done. It's a knife sharpener, sorry. This is great because as you maybe saw in the meat piece, it has quite the skin. So we want to make sure that our knife can handle it. So I usually always run it by the knife sharpener here. This I got over Amazon, is from Zulay Kitchen. And this is really how you do it. There's 2 sides. One has a roughener, pretty much one has a sharpener. So we're gonna run it by the rougher first. It really doesn't take a lot. You just have to run it by it maybe 5, 6, or 7 times. It's not really not bad. And then you run it through the other one, the actual sharpener, a few times. And that's it. Usually I also, you know, just take a towel and pretty much just make sure that there's no residue from the actual sharpener. And then we're ready to go. So next, we're gonna go ahead and take the meat right here. So I already unpacked it. So now, this is a bone-in meat, so that means we have to look where the bone is. I'm gonna bring it up like this. You will see the bone is right here. So we have to make sure that either if I really cut thirds, that I cut around the bone. So since the bone is sitting like this, what I'm most likely gonna use is I'm gonna maybe cut it like this, so that I cut alongside the bone and then freeze the bone part, because I will not need a lot of bone here. On the other side, you see it sticks out here, so we have to make sure that, you know, we get an even cut. I will feel it going alongside the meat, so I'm gonna go ahead, take this. Oh, by the way, gloves, I really like to use those for cutting meat. Also, I have a cat and she roughed up my hands, so that's why I want to make sure that nothing gets in there. But of course, it's not a must. You can also cut it without. So, cutting all this open first. Now I already feel that on this side of the knife there's the bone, so I'm trying not to cut that one, since that's not gonna work. All right. And if you have a knife sharpener like I do, that's really, really easy. It's really not hard to do. So now over here, I have a little bit of skin that I have to get through before, because I feel the bone here. So I'm gonna just go ahead and cut around it. All right, and that is it. So we have a good piece of meat. This is also about the size of a normal, like a Haxen, like in Germany. So we can really good use this meat. We're cooking this tonight because this is one of our special nights. We're celebrating 6 months of marriage, my husband and me. So this is why I'm doing something special like this. So for the two of us, this is absolutely enough, because we're not actually gonna go ahead and eat the whole piece, but this piece will be cooked so much that it will fall apart in the pot. And that is it. So next we're gonna go ahead and put this in the pot, because for right now, this is all we need to do. Everything else that I showed you, the onion, the sauerkraut, we're gonna go ahead and do later. For now, we just need to cook the meat for a long time. I'm gonna explain to you here how. Okay, now we're at the step where we can actually put that to cook. I actually decided to cut a little bit more off of the meat so that we have a little bit better piece. The other piece is full of bones. Don't get me wrong, you will most likely, if you make a stew or anything, you will want to have the bones in there, because the bones give it a lot more flavor. In my case, because I couldn't separate the bones, I'm gonna go ahead and just take the meat, which is fine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the whole meat, we're gonna put it in there. Now, I'm gonna take water. So I always take filtered water because, well, usually when I cook anything like pasta or anything where we don't really eat the soup itself, the water, we don't drink it, then it doesn't really matter. But in most cases, I take it out of the filtered water. We want to pour as much in so that the meat is mostly covered. We don't want to put too much in, because then it's going to become a soup, and we don't want that. Because later it's going to just be a stew. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to check, since you can see that it's not completely in the water, we're going to have to check and make sure that it's evenly cooked. In the meantime, I'm going to put this on high, get this started. Then we're going to go ahead and take the salt and just put a good amount in, because, you know, it's going to have to cook in. So it can definitely be a little bit more salty. I wash this off because we don't want to have that salt just laying on the meat. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and take the peppercorn that I told you before. So, like I said, very important that it is in fact peppercorn. So I'm going to just go ahead and take like, you know, you see it like a normal teaspoon, and just sprinkle it. Don't actually need as much. So just so that we have that pepper flavor in there. And last but not least, I'm gonna go ahead and take the bay leaves and just put 1 or 2, since this was a half, I had to put a little bit more. And now, yeah, we can pretty much let it sit in there. We're also gonna go ahead and cover it with the lid so that it can, you know, start boiling and everything. So anytime that you cook anything, as a good tip as well, you want to cover it because it actually starts circling in there and the heat will actually build up more. So you want to keep it covered until it boils. Once it starts boiling, we're going to go ahead and reduce the heat to just the simmer part so that we don't have, you know, too much heat in there and all that. We're going to cook all of this for a good 2 hours. A big piece of meat like this will take its time. Once we're done, I'm going to go ahead and throw everything else, and we can go ahead and discuss at that point. But until then, like I said, get it boiling, and then we're going to go ahead and reduce it to low. All right, so now we have been cooking this for about 2.5 hours, I believe. I had to extend a little bit. What you can really tell it by, and I'm going to show you how it looks like now that we're almost done. This is how it looks like. You can already see that some of the meat fell apart. I did go ahead and continuously turn it from one side to the other. Also, I had to refill water every once in a while because the water does boil down and it does come out. So just remember to do that every once in a while so that it's evenly cooked. Now, you can tell when it's almost done by how soft the meat gets. Usually it's still pretty hard if, you know, it's not really done yet, but when you press on it, it feels soft. So that's how you know that it's done. Like I said, for me, on pretty low grade, it took about 2.5 to 3 hours. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the sauerkraut. For the sauerkraut, I wanted to also tell you the information on it. I'm going to show you that right here. And I wanted to also make sure that you know this is different than what you can get from in the supermarket. So that's very important to know. What we're going to do is I'm going to throw in this whole thing. So this is about, I would say maybe a pound, 500 grams of sauerkraut. So this will be good. This, like I said, is very fresh, so we can go ahead and dump this in. The only thing, if you get it from that market, what you have to make sure of is that you don't throw in, or you fish out at least, the berries that she's throwing in there. I think those are cranberries, but I'm not sure. So don't cook those within it. I'm gonna fish them out because she puts various ones in there, so cranberries and other berries. So I'm gonna just throw them in here. Fish out all the stuff that we don't need. And the difference is really that, as you can already see, the cabbage is cut way better. The actual German way and not the American way to show, you know, the actual cabbage in it and all that. So we will need that texture. With the sauerkraut that you can get at any H-E-B or Walmart, it's too fine. So when you cook it for the time that you need to cook it, it will actually cook apart, and then that defeats the whole purpose. So you want to make sure that you get real good sauerkraut, or you make it yourself. I can also try to make a video on it. I have the recipe from my family as to how my grandma makes it. But I have not done it before, so we're gonna see if I can do that. Once I have done it once successfully, I can definitely show you how. So it seems like I got all the berries out. So now we're just gonna really make sure that it's covered in that broth that we have from the pork. So we'll put it all in. Just make sure that it's also, you can cover the meat with that too. It really doesn't matter. That way the cabbage gets also really good flavor in it too. And what we also want to do is I cut onion. As you can see how the onion is really cut in like not really fine, but it also strips like that, so it matches the cabbage a little better. That's just my personal preference. Of course, you can also cut it finer or not. If you need any assistance to how to cut an onion best, you can watch my last video for the biscuits and gravy, where I explained how to cut it best. And then also here, really make sure that it's in there, mix it well, so we can have the whole flavors incorporate into each other. Since we already put salt and pepper in it, and since the sauerkraut is actually by itself already sour, as the name suggests, we don't really need to put a lot of other herbs and spices and all that in there, so that's all good. So I'm just trying to separate the onion a little bit from itself. Okay. So, now that this is sitting, we can let it sit for another, let's say about another half an hour. So that means what we can now start doing is the mashed potatoes. And for that, I'm also going to show you how. All right, this might be not interesting for some because they already know how to wash a potato. I just wanted to mention that there's different ways of how you can wash it. Some use, you know, actual scrubbing material for it. I use this one sometimes depending on the soil level. These are pretty clean, so usually I just use my hands. But since I'm not gonna go ahead and since I'm not gonna go ahead and peel the potatoes, I'm gonna go ahead, because I like the skin in my mashed potatoes, I'm gonna go ahead and actually use the scrubbing to get really everything out of all crevices and everything there is. Good thing about this one is it also has like a harder part here, so that if I really do have a crevice, I can really get in there. That's all I wanted to say about this. So next we're gonna go ahead and go into cutting. We're gonna go ahead and get into cutting of the potatoes. Just also real quick as an information as to how to cut them, since we're gonna have mashed potatoes with those. I'm using gold potatoes. Those are my favorites. You can also of course use russet potatoes, but they're a little bit more firm. So I really just like these and how they taste, so I'm gonna go ahead and use those. So as you can see, cutting them in half and then again in half, so we have a quarter. And then let's go ahead and just cut them into like cubes, because the smaller you cut them, the faster they're going to cook, and the less time we have to spend sitting there and waiting for the potatoes to get ready. All right, so for the potatoes, as you can see, I put a little water in there. The general rule for potatoes is that you put as much water in there as it takes to cover the potatoes with water. And then also I like to put salt in it already now, because all of this will cook together and it will cook into the potatoes, and you will not have to worry about salting them afterwards. So, and then just give it a stir. Also, we're gonna go ahead and turn the stove on to high so that it can start boiling. And that is it. And now we're letting this sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. I would always check with a fork. I will show you how and how it looks like once it's done. But yeah, this we're gonna let it sit together with the other dish and just let it do its thing. Okay, so now it has been about 15 minutes since I have started boiling these. So I'm gonna go ahead and check. How you're gonna check is the following. You're gonna take this and a fork. You're gonna just choose one of the thicker pieces because you want to make sure that all of them are done, right? So you're gonna fish them out and you're gonna poke them. As you can see, they're breaking apart really easy, so that means they are done. So this is what you want to do. You want to definitely monitor that. So in this case, since it's one of the thicker pieces and it's most likely already completely done, we're just gonna go ahead and drain those, and then we're gonna mash them, and I'm gonna show you how. Okay, So for those who have never seen how to drain a pod out of a pot instead of putting it in a strainer, because I need to have these potatoes in there in order to mash them, it's just easier to keep it in there, and it reduces dishes that we don't want to wash. So we're gonna go ahead and place the pot on it a little tilted so that here there's a little bit of a gap. This is where the water is gonna come out of. Then we're gonna take a towel like this, fold it a little bit so that it's long. And then we're gonna place it around here, because in most cases, if you have a gas stove, for example, those handles will be hot. You will also not want to burn yourself once you strain it, so because you need to hold the lid. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab it onto like this. You're gonna have a little bit of a gap here, just big enough so that the potatoes don't fall out. And then you're gonna take it over to the stove, to the sink. All right, in the sink, just simply dump it like this. And that is it. Okay, after you're done with draining the water out of the pot, I'm just gonna take the lid off. So here we have the done potatoes. We're gonna go ahead and get a little bit of butter in it. Now butter, I use the Land of the Lakes butter with olive oil just because I really like it also on my bread and everything. So I just pretty much cut a few pieces out and throw them in there. Butter is good because it enhances the flavor of really anything. I usually also even fry my eggs in butter because it's really tasting good. And so once we're done this, I'm gonna go ahead and already mash them so that they're a little smaller. Now, as you will see, you'll notice it is definitely very, very tight still and dry. That's why we're gonna go ahead and use milk. I usually use the reduced fat milk, but you can choose really any milk that you would like, and just pretty much play it by ear. I really don't have a specific recipe as to how much you will need. Just do it piece by piece and don't throw everything out like me. So just do it little by little. So I'm going to be using a spoon to just kind of incorporate everything now that everything is pretty much meshed. And as you saw, I mean, you saw how much milk I used. It's definitely still by taste. I know a lot of people like it a little bit more, you know, soft, a little bit more creamy or whatever. The only thing that I would like you to remember is the sauce that we're going to put on these, which is going to be coming from our main dish, is still going to be, you know, watering it down a little bit. So don't use too much milk. Don't make it too creamy. But what I have here should be good, or just a little bit more creamy if you wanted to. But this is what we're gonna use. These are our mashed potatoes. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and check on our main dish. Main dish should now be good to go, and it looks pretty good to me. What you can always do is, if you find that the dish is still a little bit too soupy, so to say, then you can always cook it open for a little bit. I usually always close it, but like I said, if there's too much soup in there, you can always also reduce it. Now, what you want to also maybe do is you can, you know, the meat is already soft to that point that it falls apart. You can see there's pieces and chunks everywhere, but of course you can also still rip it apart a little bit better, just so it's a little bit better represented in the dish later, so that you can really put it on the plates a little better. So I'm just ripping them apart until I can make sure. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like, you know, the actual fat and stuff like that. I enjoy it myself, so it's always good to just kind of, you know, rip them a little bit and just incorporate all of it with each other. So, and this is the dish. Now we're going into serving it. Okay, so now we're gonna take a little bit of the mashed potatoes. As much as you like, of course, but this is definitely a part of the main dish itself, so definitely don't, you know, work too sparingly with this one. I also like to push it a little bit apart so that the sauce can actually settle within it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take a part of our dish and put this on here. With the soup, like I said, this will also be then in the actual dish. And so that is it. Here we have our dish, which is called Kraut&Brei in German. And I hope you like it. Guten Appetit!